Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Doug Mouton in the luxurious Channel 4 Sports office. And the big news today on this Tuesday, March 13th, the Saints have signed Drew Brees. It's the news everyone in New Orleans has been waiting for since the end of the season. All right, first of all, we're on Facebook Live. If there's anything you want to ask, any comments you want to make, just drop it in the comments section. Sam is here with me, and he'll read me questions as they come up. All right, just to go through the Drew Brees deal, the reports are 2 years, $50 million. If those numbers are true, that is a huge bargain for the Saints. That is an incredibly team-friendly deal. One, he's 39 years old. Doing a 5 or 6 year deal obviously is dicey with a quarterback at that age. If it's a 2-year deal, that's amazing the Saints were able to do that. And at $50 million, if it's $25 million a year or something close to that, that is a bargain by today's quarterback standards. It would, for now, put Brees maybe in the top 5 of quarterback salaries. By the start of the season, he might not be there. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo, who just signed with San Francisco, will be a $37 million cap hit in 2018 to the 49ers. So there's no way Drew Brees is that much. And Drew Brees is worth every penny of what's a pretty good quarterback salary. No question about it. Going through what he did in 2017 is the surest indication of why you had to get this done. Yes, he threw for the least total passing yards that he had in his 12 years with the Saints, but that was a good thing. The Saints offense changed. You saw it. They had been running the ball for the 3 previous years about 37% of the time. In 2017, they ran the ball 44% of the time. It was a much more ground-based offense. It was obviously an enormously productive offense. It took time off the clock, which is why there were fewer passes. But Drew Brees led the NFL in completion percentage, led the NFL in yards per pass, to incredibly important stats. He was efficient. He was brilliant. The eyeball test will tell you he was great. Lowest interceptions he had thrown in his time in New Orleans. Drew Brees was terrific in this new version of the Saints offense at age 38. There is every reason to believe he can do it again at age 39. And if you saw the Saints in the second half of the season, you know that team was this close to getting to the Super Bowl. But that is 100% contingent on number 9 being back. And regardless of how the money plays out, number 9 is back for 2018 and apparently 2019 too. It is all 100% good news. And the good thing about wrapping this up on Tuesday, early in free agency, while a lot of the guys you might have been pursuing are still out there, now you know exactly how much money you have to work with so you can pursue anyone you want to pursue. Sam,
okay.
We got something?
Yeah, one of the first questions we got is from Anthony. He wants to know if the Saints will go after one of the big-name defensive free agents, like Ndamukong Suh or Malcolm Butler.
I think it's certainly possible. Malcolm Butler, I don't think is the guy, although they obviously pursued that trade for him. There were reports yesterday about Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, a veteran cornerback, long cornerback, lengthy like the Saints like. He's 31 years old. The Giants are letting him go. They're starting over, so that's less performance-based and more on where the Giants sit. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler. I do think the Saints will go after a corner. Now, they did not tender Delvin Breaux. Look, these things are ridiculously complicated, and I don't pretend to have full understandings of all of the financial / accounting rules. But what it does mean, the Saints could still re-sign Delvin Breaux, just at a smaller number. It was a $1 million number. They didn't want to make that commitment. They might not want to make that commitment because they want to leave that money free to pursue a free agent. I certainly think the Saints need help on defense. There's no doubt. And to me, two areas. You could certainly use more linebacker help, but more than that, you need to give Cam Jordan help up front. Now, you're still going to have the draft, but I do think the Saints are going to be looking defensive end. The problem is in free agency, the big money defensive ends are so expensive. I don't know if they're going to have that kind of money to go get one. Cam Jordan played the most snaps of any of the Pro Bowl defensive linemen. He's on the field a lot. You really could use some help up front. So I agree in principle. I don't know if they're going to have the money to go after one of the big names on the defensive line. Look, there have been a lot of mentions about Jimmy Graham, so let me get that out the way. Jimmy Graham, I don't think is going to cost the big money some people might think. Jimmy Graham's now 31. Played 5 years in New Orleans, then 3 years in Seattle. He has a little bit of tread off the tires. If Jimmy Graham is willing to take a team-friendly deal, Jimmy Graham is an upgrade, and I've actually debated this in my own head a bunch with Jimmy Graham, because one, in the new offense that runs the ball more, Jimmy Graham's not a blocker, so he doesn't fit the same as he did in the Saints offense of 4 years ago when he was here, but the Saints also had led the NFL in third down conversion percentage. They were first in 2014, first in 2015, first in 2016. And then last year, third down was their Achilles heel. They were 19th in the NFL. Jimmy Graham would be a huge upgrade on third downs. I don't think you could use him every down the way you did. I think you'd see him have less overall snaps, but he would still make an enormous impact in the passing game. And I think that's where... Look, the idea of free agency is to make yourself upgrades. I do think Jimmy Graham would be an upgrade, but I do believe the money has to be very careful on that deal. You can't overspend for a 31-year-old tight end who doesn't totally fit your offense, makes you better in the red zone, makes you better in the passing game, but you'd still need to play one of the other guys when you wanted to run the ball. So I think I like the idea of going after Jimmy Graham. I'll just be careful on how much I spent. And the last reports that I've seen, and again, we're recording this around 1 o'clock. So if you're watching this later, this could have changed. We might already know a Jimmy Graham verdict by this afternoon. As we're doing this Facebook Live, we do not know the Jimmy Graham verdict. And I'll say the last report had the Saints and the Packers both all in on Jimmy Graham. So we'll see where that goes. And look, he fits the Packers the exact same way he fits the Saints, although Green Bay probably wants to throw it even more than the Saints, but he fits them the same way. There are very few athletic tight ends like Jimmy Graham who can get up the seam and help in a passing game the way he can. Sam.
So you've talked about some of their needs. What do you think the Saints will do in the first round of the draft coming up?
Well, first round of the draft is 100% contingent on what you've done in free agency, right? I do think the Saints are going to go after... I thought Jarvis Landry was a great fit for the Saints because he can do the things that Jimmy Graham can do in the passing game. Get up the seam, super tough, play in traffic, help you on third downs, and he's a blocker. So I do think the Saints will go for help in that spot, whether that's a slot wide receiver who can block like Jarvis Landry or a tight end who can block and play in the passing game. I do think that's the one thing you need on offense to solidify your offense. Now, I do think you absolutely need depth along the offensive line. My guess is Sinio Kelemete gets a better deal to go someplace else in free agency, and then you're really down to 6 offensive linemen. You need a couple of offensive linemen. So I do expect that to be depth picks. If you get an offensive lineman in free agency, that lessens the need in the draft, but I don't think that's a first-round need. First round of the draft, I think, is going to come down to a guy like Cortland Sutton. If you haven't found a wide receiver tight end, a guy like him who can play, a big wide receiver that can play in the running game, either a guy like them, or if you haven't gotten a pass-rushing defensive end, you'd go there. Now, Alex Okafor, the Saints signed on a 1-year deal last year, did a terrific job for the Saints while he was with the team, hurt his Achilles, torn Achilles, and I hate to say this, we've done so much research on what an Achilles injury means because it happened to DeMarcus Cousins. And Achilles really does slow you down in a big way. I'm not sure Alex Okafor losing a step is going to be the guy the Saints will want to go get. So I don't know if it'll be Okafor, and I don't know if they'll be able to afford one of the pass-rushing defensive ends. So certainly that becomes a high priority in the draft. Now, the Saints haven't been able to find that guy in the draft, and I certainly think linebacker is a draft/free agency need. I do think the Saints, if the Brees numbers are right, are going to have enough money to get at least one, what I would call, A, B tier free agent, and then another lesser, I think they're going to have money to bring in a couple of guys. So let's see who they bring in. If they can bring in a pass rusher, it eliminates that need in the draft a little bit. If they can bring in a linebacker, if they can bring in a tight end / blocking wide receiver, all those things take the need away from the draft. So for now, and plus when you pick as low as the Saints are in the draft at 27, it's hard to put an asterisk on one guy and say, look, if we get this guy, we're good. Because at 27, there's going to be so many floating parts, it's hard to know who to get. So the draft, let's give it a week, and then we'll know a lot more about what the needs are for the draft.
Okay, and if you want to wrap it up with one more, a couple of quarterback deals have been done today. Kirk Cousins apparently has a fully guaranteed contract, potentially the first.
Yeah, well, what is interesting about Kirk Cousins, all right, first of all, if you saw the Saints play the Redskins, my biggest takeaway from that game, and I thought the Saints were a better team, and obviously the Saints won, was that Kirk Cousins is a legitimate NFL quarterback. Is he Drew Brees? No. But is he worth every bit of this reported $84 million deal? Absolutely, because I don't think you can get to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl without that guy. I know Philadelphia did it with Nick Foles, but I think Kirk Cousins on that Minnesota team is a great signing for Minnesota. Now, what was interesting about it, we heard yesterday that Minnesota had sort of kicked the tires on calling Tom Condon on a Drew Brees deal. Any GM, with the exception of maybe Green Bay or New England, where they have crazy elite quarterbacks, any GM, when the Saints hadn't done a deal with Drew Brees yesterday, who didn't call Tom Condon and say, hey, what's the deal with Drew Brees? Any GM who didn't do that wasn't doing their job. So for Minnesota to actually make that call, and I'm guessing Tom Condon said we're super close to a deal, thanks but no thanks. Minnesota calling on Drew Brees first was the smart, right play, and it tells you where Drew Brees sits in the pecking order. ESPN reported a little while ago that Drew Brees had guaranteed offers for more than what the Saints were offering. I totally believe that, and I also totally believe that Drew Brees thinks that this team is this close to a Super Bowl and wanted to be here. I think Kirk Cousins is worth every penny of what Minnesota is paying him. I did find the Case Keenum deal going to Denver curious because I'm still not convinced he's the Super Bowl quarterback to build around. I think Minnesota was clearly a team this close to the Super Bowl this year. I think it's a big upgrade at the most important position in football at quarterback. So I think it's a big upgrade for Minnesota. I think congratulations to him. They went and got the guy they needed. I think it's a good deal for Kirk Cousins. And I think it's a good deal for Minnesota because I think they could not get to the Super Bowl without getting the quarterback. And Kirk Cousins is the best guy that's out there that they could get. We're going to wrap up this Facebook Live. Thanks for joining us. Doug Mouton from the Sports Office. Andrew Dope right now is all around town. We're talking to Deuce McAllister. We're talking to Nick Underhill from The Advocate. We're talking to former Saints executive Jim Miller, getting all kinds of opinions about Drew Brees. I'll tell you my opinion. I think it's a great deal. If the numbers are right, it's a spectacular deal for the Saints in length, in money, and in a chance to go to Atlanta next February for the Super Bowl. The Saints are that close, and Drew Brees is back. It's a good thing. Thanks for watching.